Welcome to the American Made and Paid Show, the home of free speech and independent thought.
The big story is freedom of speech is really in trouble. The far left knows that at any time they can call for a sponsor boycott of anyone they despise.
It is right here, right now, where you'll get your weekly dose of unfiltered truth.
It's non-negotiable. Pre-existing conditions will be protected. This president has said this as a candidate.
Insight.
Very few people I know could have handled it. We can never, ever let this happen to another president again.
And information that challenges the American way of life.
Welcome, everyone, to the American Made and Paid Show. I am your host, Zach King. I got Professor Dreg with me. It is Friday, April 26, 2019. Thank you for joining us today on, I believe this is the 15th episode. And something that we, can you believe we are 15 episodes in?
15 in.
It's nuts. It's nuts. But you know what? I like that we're getting a little bit more lax with it, starting to get into the stride. Actually, before I jump into the main subject matter of today's podcast, how are you feeling doing these podcasts Monday to Friday? I never checked in on you. Like, are you enjoying this? Do you like it?
Dude, I love it. Are you kidding me? Come on. This is cool. I like it.
It's funny how fast an hour goes by, because you and me, for people who don't know, we could talk for hours, right? Button heads and agreeing and disagreeing about a bunch of stuff, because that's what I want the premise of this show to be about. I already want to mention this on this podcast, that some people have written me and said, hey, you guys are kind of crazy. I don't agree with this. You're so full of what? You don't know anything. Like, what business do you have talking about this? And I go, well, part of the nature of this show, you guys, is to get a different perspective and to talk about things. Some of them are rooted in our own experiences. A lot of it is also in how we look at statistical data, progressive and conservative history, formulate our own conclusions. And that should be the point of it. So if you don't like it, stay tuned, because one day we're going to have a phone-in system and we're going to do this live. So you guys can come in and debate this stuff live or inquire further, because that's the thing, is we both come from totally different worlds. So our perspectives are going to be different. I even remember you at one point saying something, and I go, no, you can't be serious. So it's not like we're agreeing with each other on this podcast consistently. For all of you listeners out there, just know that this is just going to be a different perspective. And I also welcome constructive feedback, but if you haven't done so already and you're listening, be sure to go on Apple Podcasts and leave us a review, and actually write out a review. So you say, hey, I don't like hearing the baby in the background. Well, we're working on that, one step at a time. Anyways.
Yeah, pretty soon there's going to be 2 in the background, so you guys better be careful.
But I do agree with what you were saying earlier, just to kind of keep it casual for a second. We do need to have another voice on this show at some point. A female voice would be preferable for obvious reasons, but also because the perspective is going to be a little bit different. And but that being said, I think that we're slowly starting to hit a stride here where we kind of take a step back, talk about what we need to talk about, and then kind of drift into some other things. So to jump into today's topic and what we want to discuss, we've touched a little bit on presidential candidates. Earlier this week, we talked about Pete Buttigieg and Seth Moulton, but I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about one of our longtime contenders, which is Joe Biden. And Joe Biden is interesting because he's somebody who's obviously in the lead. It's him and Bernie. However, people have divided responses when it comes to Biden, partly because he's a white straight man, doesn't fit the whole intersectional progressive candidate that people would like, and secondly, because he's creepy. So he kind of gets attacks from all around. But, this is a guy who obviously served as the vice president for about 8 years. His history is marked also by the fact that he was on the Clarence Thomas hearings. In fact, I want to hear your perspective on that, because Joe Biden was present for that. You were present for that as well. So at some point, I do want to hear you say that a little bit more. But yeah, I personally think of Biden as just a pretty vanilla candidate for the most part. I don't, to be honest, know much about his policies, but I would expect that it's just, typical Democrat policies that people have been peddling for many, many decades. But what are your thoughts on Joe Biden and some of the presidential candidates?
Well, Jesus.
It's actually, this is his third run. One thing I didn't know, but this is his third try.
Yeah. So look, this is what I feel about the president. The president of the United States has no bearing on our lives whatsoever.
Yeah.
Except for how we're going to be taxed. And social services, welfare, food stamps, Medicaid, waiting at the county hospital, that's all welfare. People don't want to, admit it, but that's just welfare, all of it, So the only thing I could say about Joe Biden is that he's a racist. He's always been a racist, and everything he promotes is racism. For example.
Thank you. I was going to say, what do you mean, Professor Dreg?
No, because here's the thing, and this just proves how racist everybody is, as far as like everybody on the left.
Everyone's a racist.
Yeah, because it's crazy. Because think about this. The one thing in 75 that they caught him on tape, and Mark Levin touched on this. In fact, he touched on this yesterday. Mark Levin agrees with Joe Biden on this. In 75, Joe Biden was against busing black kids to white schools. And Mark Levin agrees with him. He's like, he agrees with them, but it was just semantics and how, on why he was against it.
Right.
So, but here's the thing. And we talked about this, or we spoke about this already. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act is a Jim Crow law that made segregation legal again.
Okay.
So, of course, they were against it. And that's why I'm for vouchers. Why am I for school vouchers? School vouchers allows any kid from any ghetto school to go to any school of their choice, because they will go give the money, right, to whatever school they want. But instead of getting bused over there, I guess their parents are going to have to drive them. But here's the thing. Why was Mark Levin and Joe Biden against busing in 75?
So Mark Levin actually supported him on weren't able to bus black kids to white schools. I heard about that, like something about struggling to desegregate, right? And that there was actual government intervention and how they mandate people get to schools based on race.
Yeah. So okay. So what does Joe Biden do now in 2020? So in 2019, 75, he was racist. Mark Levin played it on one of his shows about how he was against he was against, like, literally said, kind of like what you and Kim Iverson spoke about, people self-segregating.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, in the 70s, people were not self-segregating. It was still California law that blacks could only live in zoned areas.
Okay.
And this wasn't like in the 60s. This is in the 70s. So like in San Francisco, blacks were only zoned to live in Hunters Point, Bayview, like a Candlestick, all the ghettos that,
right.
that we see today, like in the Tenderloin. That's how it was. Like in San Jose was East San Jose, Oakland, East Oakland. It just seemed every city that had East, like East Palo Alto, there was white Palo Alto and then black Palo Alto, East Palo Alto. That's just how it was in the 70s.
Right.
And and what made that possible? The Civil Rights Act of 1964, because it defined what segregation was and was not. And so it was just all racist. And that's why we talked about that earlier in a previous episode, how it's not a belief, it's a fact. What Martin Luther King was advocating for was a hoax. It didn't help anybody with civil rights. It just didn't. It took away your rights that were given to you in the 50s. So Joe Biden is still to this day trying to hide the fact that he's a racist. And what does he do? He hires a black woman who says that white men should not be ruling the Democrat Party. The leadership of the Democrats should all be non-white male. That's what Joe Biden did. Hires a black chick advocating this, and she's just a crook. Her name is Symone Sanders. You gotta look her up.
Oh, okay. Say no more, because I'm very, very familiar with that individual. I don't know how she's on CNN. I just want to say this on the podcast, and this is just completely my opinion. It's not rooted in any of facts, so to speak. But this is the same lady who was very, very vocal about Charlottesville, the statues being torn down. She's like, yeah, we got to remove that from history and all that. And she obviously was also one of the campaign managers.
Riots. That's what she
okay.
does.
So I was going to get to that. She is part of the problem that creates more division, even amongst moderate Democrats. Like,
so let me ask you a question now. When somebody incites riots, and these riots happen in a black community, what would you call that person?
A racist.
Exactly. And she's black. So think about that. What is your opinions on that? Seriously, I really want you to think about that and tell everybody, just from thinking about it, I don't want to say it for the first time, but seriously, because you're not from the ghetto. And people from the ghetto rely on guys like you, because you got to be honest. Whenever you see a black leader, think about this. Like in Baltimore, think about what's that one mayor that was on crack? If you look at Washington, D.C. and Baltimore,
right? Look
at the black mayors that they've had. Even in San Francisco, look at the black mayor that we had. Not Willie Brown, this one right here.
London Breed?
Yeah. Her brother committed murder, threw some broad out the window.
I heard about that. I wasn't sure if it was true or not.
Oh, no, it's real. So, and she wants him off of but I want to save that for later. But seriously, this is for you, honest to God. This is something you need to answer.
Ask away. No.
You are the person that people look to us for leadership. So seriously, if a person who incites riots in black neighborhoods, you call them a racist, but she's black. So what is she?
A racist.
Yeah. Well, against who?
Well, the thing is, let me just kind of give the context here, right? So a white man, right, anoints, and I'm going to say, or appoints.
Yeah. Anoints,
appoints a black woman who has had a history of being very, very vocal and, for lack of a better word, emotional when it comes to race issues, not somebody who approaches it moderately. And as a result, uses her to basically create more division in minority communities that just want to get better. But because it's very, very easy to appease that to people, you in effect create more divide in those communities, in those cities, because you just want a race riot. It's almost like they're asking for it. Like, I think that when I look at someone like Symone Sanders, right, you asked for my honest opinion, and it's going to take me a couple of minutes to evaluate, because I'm like you. I think my thoughts out loud, and then I resolve them at the end. Symone Sanders is one of the types where even if there were conclusions and solutions for the black community, and we say we had a solution for that, which we do. We've talked about it on this show already. There are solutions for these communities that people can put forward. Even if you handed that to her, that wouldn't be enough. These are the types of people that are so emotionally driven by race issues and by prejudice, like real prejudice. Forget racism for a second, just prejudice. Like, you just don't like people. You just don't like white people. You just don't like anybody who doesn't fit your agenda, that even if you gave them solutions, they want a riot. They want the riot. It's not that they actually want solutions. They want division to continue happening. Why? Because it keeps them exactly where they are. And some people are actually really, really dumb. They think that they are on a mission to create change in their own communities, but you're actually creating more division. I know that sounds like a very superficial statement, but these people want drama. You know how it's like a bunch of kids just like to listen to other people gossip, and then they like to hear which kid is getting picked on and then add fuel to the fire? That's like a very basic, rudimentary example of what kids do, right? That's what she does. You want that. You want to see people of different races fighting each other. It's fun for you.
No, but I get that. But she is a person of power. Remember, she was Bernie Sanders' lady.
Campaign manager, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly, but she was one of Bernie's dudes and stuff. But seriously, I really want you to answer the specific question. What do you call a person who incites riots in black communities? Because what happens in riots in black communities?
Blacks get killed.
will not just get killed, but then they destroy the local businesses. They destroy. I mean, think about this. And this
No,
is
I want to answer this, but keep asking me. Go ahead.
I really want you to think about this, because I want you to think about what happened when we spoke about how Woodrow Wilson. See, because there is specific parallels between what happened in 1913 and when they brought back the KKK and gave money to the labor unions to destroy black businesses, and what Symone Sanders and people like her do. And this is the stuff that you will not hear on Rush Limbaugh or Mark Levin, who are just nothing more than just, Jesus. All these dudes you'll never see them in the ghetto. Why? Because it's just, I mean, because I don't know these dudes in particular, or never met them, but it's just, they are just a different type of progressive. They just are. And why? Because progressive ideology isn't about, big government. It's progressive ideology really is rooted in atheist belief. And I know this because I'm an atheist. And the belief that Aryans are better than everybody else. That's all you need to be a progressive. Know God and know that Aryans are number one. So back on this.
Yeah. I'm thinking. I want to. Yeah, this is a good pacing, because as we're talking about this, our listeners are also thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. Who is this lady? What do you call a person who incites riots in black neighborhoods? Because this is happening again. What we are seeing what we saw in 1913 with Woodrow Wilson, we are seeing now today. But instead of a white guy doing this, we are seeing blacks in charge doing this. So instead of a white person say, hey, go riot, let's go burn down black businesses, black churches, we are seeing this now with black people saying this. We are seeing a black person inciting riots. We are seeing a black person literally destroying black businesses in these black communities. But then guess what? In these black communities, these businesses aren't owned by blacks. They're owned by
Chinese.
Exactly.
I knew this was going to go down there, and that's the truth.
Institutional
nail salons,
racism,
laundromats, restaurants. It's almost
grocery
like
stores, mini marts,
and they
owned
take
by Asians in these communities.
And that's well. So you keep alluding to this. You keep alluding to this throughout our podcast, and I almost feel like our shows are very, very serialized. Like, you got to hear this stuff from the beginning, because there's a motif here, right? It's kind of like when you watch Game of Thrones. Nobody watches a one-off episode. You got to know it from the beginning. No, but it's true, right? Wouldn't you agree? But what I'm trying to say is this:
I've never seen Game of Thrones, but
you keep saying the black community has been destroyed, and
yeah, doesn't exist.
They go after the next person, and so let me try to get this straight. Because that's already happened. Now you have black individuals, not just like Symone Sanders, but Maxine Waters. She's another one.
Yeah, dude, she owns banks. Seriously, she owns banks. That's
and they go into these communities and they incite riots, and not just with their own people, but almost knowingly or unknowingly hurting other minority businesses.
Oh no, they know. Oh no, they know. It's specific. And it's targeted. The laws have been written already. And that's why institutional racism only applies to two classes of people. Black African Americans specifically, because like if you're Nigerian and you come here, you're fine. If you're from Somalia,
African American, because a lot of people will actually Nigerian, Somalia, that's African, not African American.
Yeah, they're African. Those are fine. Those dudes are fine.
Yeah.
But if you're African American, you are screwed. If you're Chinese, you are screwed. Because, Asians love to set up shop. Not love to, but...
No, but you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And I know this. I didn't grow up in the ghetto, but I know this. Because even if I didn't, my family started in that. And that's restaurant business, grocery stores, predominantly in low-income neighborhoods. That's how it starts.
But why? Because it's cheaper to operate your business in a ghetto than it is in the suburbia. It's just how it goes. They do that on purpose.
So wait, I want to answer your question. What do you call a black person who goes? No, let me specify this. Are you saying what do you call a black person, or what do you call a person who goes in?
Yeah, person in general. Like, what do you call a person who incites riots in black communities or in the ghetto?
An anarchist, punk rocker. I mean, there's a lot of different words for.
No, but that's the thing. It's straight up. No, because like an anarchist wouldn't care. They don't care because it doesn't affect them.
And there's no agenda. There's no bigger agenda.
There's no agenda, and that's why like anarchists don't act that way. Anarchists want to be left alone. But these people, like Symone, they're just nothing but white supremacists, and that's all they're doing. And they just want in. They allow her in because she's pretty young. She's not old.
No.
What are her credentials? She has none. What has she seen or done? Nothing. Literally nothing. Literally nothing. And yes, somehow, some way, she is going to be running a seasoned politician's presidential campaign 2 times in a row. Bernie Sanders was a seasoned politician. And so is Joe Biden, who's even more seasoned than Bernie Sanders.
I see the parallel.
Why are they recruiting somebody who is black to destroy black communities? But anyway,
a white supremacist.
I want it because I don't want to spend too much time on this.
But this is I mean,
no, because
talking about Joe Biden and then you bringing in Symone Sanders has reasonable symmetry, and I think we need to.
Yeah, because I'm telling you now, he's a racist. Why is he a racist? Because he's bringing in a racist to destroy blacks. She probably hates being black. I mean, I don't know her personally. I don't know crap about her other than she incites riots. But why would anybody do that? Why would anybody advocate for burning down black communities, black businesses? But they're not black. They're Asian businesses that service black people who live in those white properties. Because, like a black community, what's a black community? There is no black community. Black communities are usually conservative. Because when you say a black community, that means the black people own the buildings. And whenever you see that, they're all conservative. You don't see.
You want to know why that is in that parallel too? When the black people own the buildings, this is for sure. They also own the Baptist church down the street.
Yeah, they own everything. No, but that's just how it works.
I always have to interject and say that because guess what? There's a church nearby, and that's the biggest thing they go to. Like
no, but yeah, but that's the truth. Like, and I always say this. We'll always concede this point. If it wasn't for Christianity, we'd still be slaves to this day. Seriously, we would still be slaves to this day, and that is a fact.
Yeah,
and it's. But as soon as progressives started taking away God and taking away, manhood and all this other stuff, because seriously, that literally made it okay by putting us all in prison to start acting up. Like, oh yeah, let's just bone us. Bone each other down and stuff because, oh man, I don't care.
Every time I talk to you, I feel like I'm just seeing a bigger bird's eye view that you just can't learn this from reading necessarily. It has to come from not only just like the life experience that you talk about, but also just a completely different look at how political ideology is taught. But it's not about political ideology, it's about like lifestyle. It's like, this is what goes on.
No, but it's the truth. And that's because everything that, like, look at any group in the progressive quote unquote realm, and every single group was meant to destroy everybody except for whites. And people go, nah, that's impossible. You're going to tell me like The gay, what do gays have to do with this?
But what do you have to say? We talked about that. I want to actually present this as a counter argument, like I normally do. What do you say to those people on the right? And actually, I to some degree agree with them on this, where they say that white people are actually being victimized and opposed more so today than ever.
Yeah, but that's false. They're not being victimized. The only whites that are being victimized are the ones that actually believe in God or Jesus. And that's the only ones. If you're a white dude and you're a Muslim, there's nobody hunting you down. If you're a white dude who's gay, nobody's hunting you down. Come on, what are they talking about? White people?
Well,
They're killing themselves.
Huh?
But you proved that. I said the white people are killing themselves.
Well, yeah. No, but there's the conspiracy around the birth rates, But do you feel like that's more because of the fact that white people just aren't breeding, or
no? It's not about white people. It's a death. It's progressive ideology is a suicidal ideology. Look at what's happening to the gay men. I was totally unaware that 76% are trying to kill themselves. Why? Because you're not supposed to be doing that. Like all of the medical issues from doing butt sex, it's a legitimate thing. That's science. It's not some kind of God thing or Christian thing. So progressives are killing whites. They're killing the whites who still believe in God and Christianity. It's hard to be a white Jew. Why? Because they're kicking your ass on the streets. Seriously, you wear one of them yarmulke hats and you're going to get sucker punched.
Yeah, that's true. Those kinds of hate crimes go unreported, and that happens.
Oh, no, it gets reported. Seriously, the majority of all hate crimes are done against Jews in New York.
I was just going to say it happens in Brooklyn every day.
Yeah, no, and it's reported. I believe the hate crimes, 80% of all hate crimes are done against white Jews. And why? Because they're white and they believe in God. And it's the same thing with white Christian males. White Christian males are attacked. And guess what? If you're a white progressive, well, you're probably gay and you're killing yourself.
So it's not the responsibility of any, it's the ideology that eventually it becomes the decline.
Well, I mean, the thing is like this. I'm just addressing what you said about what do you say to the people on the right when they say whites are, well, they're not, look, it's not because you're white. I mean, because this is the problem with whites. They want to be victimized, but it doesn't apply just to whites. If you are a Christian or a Jew, regardless of your race, you're going to be attacked by progressives. It's just how it works, because progressive ideology cannot work if there's somebody who believes in God, because you have to take God out of the equation for this ideology to stick. Because Trump said the other day, America will never be a socialist country. Well, fuck, you take God out and it will be. Look right. What happened in Venezuela. Venezuela is a godless country. And now look at them. No, seriously, it's funny. Because, no atheist wants to admit this, but we need religion in order to have social order.
Well, and that's what Ben Shapiro actually, whether you agree with him or not, he knows this from a religious and a what we would call a philosophical point of view, right? But you know this from your lifestyle and your experiences. So I want to marry the two right now to some degree. I haven't read his new book, The Right Side of History. What do I know? Promoting a Ben Shapiro book on the show. But from interviews I've heard on Dr. Phil, Joe Rogan, he talks about what Western civilization, when I say Western civilization, I'm talking about the values that we stand for as conservatives, right? And arguably all people stand for. A lot of people just aren't aware. That's the best way to live. It really is the best way to live. But what he argues is that it's propped up on Greek reason and Judeo-Christian values. So there needs to be that tension. You need to have religion because a civilization without it, right? People aren't good at governing themselves. Throughout history, we've propped up idols and have destroyed ourselves in one way or another without it. But then if you're so religiously fundamental and there's no, to the point where it's a loss of logic and no reason, then you know what I mean?
Okay, but here's my point. Because I don't want to just say it's all.
I haven't read the book, by the way, so I could be completely
No. But here's the thing: we cannot discount Asian religion, which is like the Indians, they believe in whatever they believe in with the Sikhs and well, geez, there's like Hinduism and that, like there's two different major religions in India. And then, well, there's probably more, but because Buddhism comes from India. But you can't discount Japan, China, Korea, well, I believe Korea is still Buddhist, right? You know what I mean? And that's a religion. It doesn't really matter what the religion is, but we need religion for social order. So I'm not like advocating, like saying like Christianity is better than Buddhism, but every culture, every society, we need it. Because if we don't have individual liberties, then we are screwed. Because the problem with, like with some religions, like the king or Catholicism, when people are following that to the T, they became gods themselves. And that's the problem. Like, the people who are ruling literally become the gods. Like the King George, he was God, and Queen Isabella, she was a goddess, I guess, because she was chosen from God, and that's why she's the queen. But, people believe that, and that's why we have to be careful. That's why I really believe America is the greatest country. And if God's real, then he wants it to be how it is done in America. You know what I mean? And I think that's the beauty of Christianity. Because in Christianity, you could be as poor can be, or you could be as rich can be. Or somebody told me too, it's harder for a rich guy to go to heaven than a poor dude. And I'm thinking,
one of Jesus's lessons, one of his parables. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing, and I believe something like that. I said, yeah, this probably sounds right, because just from personal experiences, in order to get to the top, you got to step on a lot of people on your way up. You just do. You know what I mean? Because that's just how it is. Because in fair competition, you don't need to step on anybody. You really don't. But, a lot of people, I don't care what you're competing for, they like to cheat. Whether they take steroids or
buy their way in and then pay.
Yeah. Or like that Laughlin lady, she paid $500,000 to get into a good school for her kids. But that's the thing. It's like, that's just the nature of people. So if I was to pick a religion, I'd probably pick Christianity, because, I believe.
You would pick Christianity, not Satanism?
Nah, because, F that. No, because, I know a lot of Satanists, and they're effing crazy, because they just, oh, man, I don't want to get into Satanism, because that is just straight up. No, so Satanism is very close to being gay. And it's just how people might think that I'm anti-gay, but look, to me, porn is gay.
Come on now. You're going to have to explain yourself.
No, okay, look, if you're watching porn, I don't know what's more gayer than that. You're watching another penis. You're just watching a penis just drill a hole. That's gay. I don't want to see another man's junk all hard and erect and ejaculating. I don't want to see. That's gay. At the very
go back to Satanism. Why you think that's
because that's gay? Because Satanists only hedonistic behavior.
Okay.
That's all it is. That's all Satanism is. Whatever feels good, and that's the problem. If you only go,
it destroys you.
Because look, I ain't gonna lie to you. I know for a fact that getting anal sex to a guy actually feels good, because there's a bunch of nerves in the butthole.
Sure.
That makes you ejaculate. And that's just like, and of course that feels good, but it doesn't mean it's good for you.
But okay, so here's the thing though. What you just said is actually very parallelly. I can't believe we keep coming back to Christianity, but that's good, because that's part of your discovery here, is the fact that people believe that if it's not of God, it's of the devil, right? But you could say that about any lustful passions of the flesh, as it said, right? You could say that about anything that feels good, but if anything but God,
oh man.
but what I'm trying to say is that it inevitably destroys you. Anything that elicits an emotional
but you want to know what's crazy when you said that? I'm not kidding you, because I was asleep, right? I woke up And it was some dude on TV who literally said what you just said, but he said it like this. He goes, the carnal mind is, gosh darn it, because, but it was just a weird thing because you literally just said this. Like, it's amazing. But this dude was from like the 70s. Like, it was like this old.
Were you listening to Billy Graham or something?
No. That's the thing. It was an unknown pastor. He literally said something about the carnal mind is not of God, but it cannot be controlled by the laws of God, or something like that. And I was thinking, what the hell? If it's not of God and it cannot be controlled, or something, it's the carnal mind.
If it's not from God, it's of the devil.
It's no, but the thing is, it cannot be controlled by the laws of, you gotta. I don't even know where it is in the Bible, but and I'm thinking, shit, that's what the dude said today. He literally said that, and oh my goodness, what a coincidence! What a coincidence! But I believe it's in Romans or something like that, because I was trying to figure it out, like where he got it from, because that's actually a pretty good quote.
I think that people are going to either like this or they're going to continue to get frustrated because we keep alluding back to Christianity in the Bible, which I love, by the way. People can listen to this if they don't want to or not. But here's the thing that people, because you mentioned that I have to keep reminding our listeners, right? Our country's values. If you want to talk about true conservatism, it is impossible to discuss it and the finer details of it without also mentioning the Christian God. Impossible.
Yeah, and I don't mind it. Why? Because I used to be a slave. My family was from slaves. And if it wasn't for Christianity, we would all be still somewhere, picking cotton or growing tobacco. But it's the truth. It's just how it works. And it'd be foolish to say that we don't owe our lives to Christianity. Our freedoms come from Christianity, not from being a Jew, because,
Okay, now.
No, but it's the truth. It's like Jews have this slave mentality. That's why they were enslaved for so long. But it's the truth. Why were they slaves? Everywhere we went, we were enslaved people. And yet somehow, some way, Christianity saved us. Who would have thunk? You know what I mean? Because I have a lot of friends who are
about Jews and slavery, and people are going to be like, dude, shut up. Stop right now. But hey, that's what we talk about on this show. We dive into those things. That was also written. It was like God even said, you will be slaves in Egypt. There's something about another lesson where it's just like, again, I'm not doing it justice, but treat a stranger like a friend, because you were once a stranger and a slave in a foreign land, and that's Egypt. And this is not about just the Bible. This is in history. The Israelites were slaves for 400 years in Egypt. Then Moses brought them out, right? And then throughout history, their so-called state has been conquered and reconquered by many, many empires. Persia, Assyria, Babylon, so...
Well, okay, so I know, the Black Hebrew Israelites. I know a lot.
I don't know how I feel about them. I know they're pretty radical.
They still got a slave mentality. They do. They all do. No, Jesus. You got to talk to them.
I've seen them on Mission Street when I used to be in San Francisco. Man, these guys would be out on, no, not Mission, Market Street. They'd be out on Market Street, and they'd just be cussing people out.
But that's part of the slave mentality. You're just an angry dude just yelling at people for no reason.
But the whole Covington kids scandal, remember that stuff about the whole Native Hebrews? That was started by Black Hebrew Israelites, but nobody will say that. Well, people have said it, but it's not. It doesn't fit the CNN agenda that these black angry men were the reason why those kids I hate CNN for this, because it's all a big cluster. It's all stupid. The reason why those kids were gathered there and they were standing there, I guess, I don't know what they were doing. They were on a field trip or something, was because there were Black Hebrew Israelites there calling them out for being Trump supporters, right? Yep. And then they were just standing there. And then that Native American Indian war vet comes up and starts pounding the drum because of the fact that it started to become a little rowdy. But it all started... This whole scuffle would have been fine if there weren't Black Hebrew Israelites there in the first place. And it's because it was and the thing about CNN, this is to show you how stupid these people are. They're so obsessed with optics the fact that there were actually black Hebrew Israelites that were cussing these kids out in the beginning wasn't even mentioned. But that's the whole reason why all of that went down, was because there were angry black men screaming at people like, "Why you support this guy? Screw you!" You know what I mean? They were just angry, frustrated, and these kids were just standing there. They weren't doing anything.
But remember, they started to marginalize the Hebrew Israelites just because to cover their butts. And that's what they do. They will marginalize groups that support them. And that's what, all progressives got to realize that. As soon as gay people start getting out of step, they will hang them. Way they hung out these Hebrew Israelites.
There is backlash against the so-called straight, gay, white, or not straight, gay, white. That doesn't make sense.
No, but straight. I know what you're saying. Like the conservative gay guys. Yeah, because there's a lot of conservative gay dudes. Like, because this is the truth. This maybe because I'm older, but being gay meant you didn't want to get married. You didn't want to have kids, because who in the hell? I mean, why would you want to? The whole point of being gay is to be counterculture. It's not because you want to be like everybody else. You want to be colorful. You want to, be young forever. And having kids is like an anchor that ages you quick. You know what I mean? But it's just, and that's why, like, when those guys, who was it? But they're really famous fashion designers who were against gay marriage. And they were like, I'm not for it, and I don't think gay people should be raising kids.
Yeah.
I forgot who they were, but it was a very famous designer. And, they try to boycott him and stuff, but nobody cared. You know what I mean? Because it's at the, well, I mean, there was no point in saying other than, like, they will hang you, if they need to. So, progressive will hang their own really quick. And they did it to these people just for having a different opinion. So if you are a conservative gay guy, you're like public enemy number one.
That's true. And that's been the consensus of Walk Away with Brandon Strzok too. He's,
yeah, but look what they did to Milo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like Milo. Although I mean, Jesus, like a lot of the stuff he does, it's like, oh my God, if he can only, like, I don't know. I just don't like, as far as conservative people go, that I've seen, the only person I really like would be you, Savage, and I wish I knew more about Alex Jones, but I think I could like Alex Jones.
Alex Jones, I mean, I'm going to be unpopular for saying this, but I don't just care anymore. I mean, Alex Jones, if you listen to him in context, like when he was talking about like some of that MK Ultra stuff, and he was talking about one world government and all that, like that, he's not wrong. And Arrested Development, that's one of my favorite ones, because he's the only one that I've heard who talked about it basically the way you've been talking about it, but from his lens. Because he's Alex Jones, he has his different spin.
Yeah, like seriously,
the reason why you like him also is because.
Well, I never heard him, but I have to now. You know what I mean?
Independent thinker, and I watched that interview he did with Farrakhan years ago. It's great.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. But it was more like, because I like Farrakhan. I really do.
You like Farrakhan?
Yeah, I really do. I like Farrakhan, not so much because he's anti-Jew or anything like that, but I like Farrakhan politically because he's conservative. Like, he's a real conservative dude. Like, he's the first one to tell you, don't play in your butt. Don't fall into them traps. Don't be feminine. You have to be like, because in the streets, you need a guy like Farrakhan. You need somebody to tell, hey, look, you got to be a dad. You got to raise your kids. Don't fall into that trap of that present mentality, that because he was in prison. So Farrakhan knows that. Why do you think? Okay, so why Islam took hold in prison? Because that guaranteed you are not going to get raped. The only way not to get raped in prison was to become a member of Islam. And you did not. I mean, think about this. You want a 12-inch cock in your asshole?
Well, what about Christianity, though? I mean,
look, you can be Christian all you want, but you're gonna get You know,
Well, why? Okay, so what separates Islam and prison and Christianity? Like, what does that guarantee?
Because they take it seriously. Like, they don't want to, like, you know, Christians. Here's the thing about Christians, and this is the fundamental flaw of Christianity, at least on the streets. And because this is why everybody calls them hypocrites or whatever, because you could literally do the worst things and you're going to go to heaven. But in Islam, you know, you got to have this strict life your entire life. So look, if I'm not going to get raped, I'm joining Islam, you know, because I don't want to get my butt gaped into like this 12-inch hole. I'm going to have diarrhea for the rest of my life. You know what I mean?
All right. Let's spare the graphic language.
But that's what happens. And people have to understand why blacks became Muslims in prison. And that's why Farrakhan was converted. And people forget he was in prison. Same thing with Malcolm X.
The only person you're missing from that segmented list is not Muhammad Ali. He went on his own.
Well, no, but he converted because he saw what was happening.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Christianity didn't stop what was happening in the ghetto. It might have stopped slavery, but it didn't stop what was happening with the progressive movement. See, and that was the thing. And we talked about this yesterday. People don't see it, but Christianity right now is being converted the same way it was converted in Germany. And Muhammad Ali saw that.
It's not, and if that's the case, then it's not true Christianity. It's it's Christian just in the label and then in the superficial values, but that's not actually what Christians.
But that's what Christianity became in the church when we had kings, but that's the weakness of Christianity is that the leaders eventually become gods themselves.
Well, that's the thing. That is not just you pointing that out. That has been a recurring theme throughout history in the Bible. And it's not just limited to Christians. It's also, I mean, I have to use Jewish history because it illustrates this partly, right? The Jews originally, you know, they were ruled by the judges when they went back to their land. They didn't want that. Then they wanted kings, right? They wanted someone that they could look towards. That's always how it's been. That's why it's very legalistic in its nature and its law, because they need to look to something. Like, here's the thing. This is going to be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but I have to express it on this show.
Yeah, go for it.
The whole concept of circumcision as it pertains in the Bible, and this is interesting here, was because it was to separate that group of people from all the other groups of people. And they needed that physical, it's supposed to be a physical representation of the promise God made to Abraham. Now, here's the thing. Was it necessary? I argue no, but that is to set them apart as holy people, not like the others. And the thing is, throughout history...
And that's the secret, I guess, because you wouldn't know unless you pull down their pants.
Yeah, well, that's how it was in the old days. But that's what the people demanded. The people demanded, like, if we're going to obey, we need to see God. We need to see a physical thing. And that's why, like, with again, I could be wrong about this, but my thoughts on, like, with Christianity and all that today is that you don't have to see anything to believe. You don't need a law book to abide by to believe. You know what I mean? It's because everything is idolatry. That's what I'm convinced of. It's like everything that you put up as your guiding principle, whether it's the law, whether it's kings, whether it's a physical manifestation of your God. There's a reason why I don't even like having crosses in my house. It's just because it's not genuine. You see what I mean? It's a worldly thing. Everything about what we do and what we believe in is spiritual. You know, so what I'm trying to say is to take it back to how it's being molded into like Nazi Germany. Well, that happens with cult-like behavior and also sometimes a strict adherence to legalism, right? And what you deem to be right, because that's the fundamental flaw of man, is that you start doing that, you start becoming legalistic. That's what happens. Like, I've known people who kind of come out of a different faith, like New Age or whatever, and they go into Christianity, but then they're not spiritually mature yet. I'll just put it that way. I don't know them. Again, I'm not here to judge anyone.
Yeah.
But they're not spiritually mature. No, but they're not spiritually mature. And guess what happens? I've actually encountered Christians who were very, very strong in their faith, and then they started to dive really, really deep into it and were led astray because now they were being more dictated by laws and rules. And I've seen Christians go from like straight up being Jesus being the way to going, now you have to obey the Torah word for word, or you got no faith. Like the transition. So what I'm trying to say is that's when man starts to decide what's good for men, as opposed to you as an individual deciding what God is good for you. That's the difference here. And what we're seeing with the so-called Christian left is people taking these values. Oh, it sounds good. It feels good. But I'm really going to be fronting my own agenda, even though I think I'm doing the right thing. But when you put that in the context of I'm just going to give it to you and men are going to physically carry this out, and there's collective mindset, it's like, who's the moral compass here? Is it now men or is it God? See, it's...
Yeah, well, but see, that's a good question. Now, take it back to the streets. So the answer would be God. And that's why all of the Muslims, because think about this. I remember you telling me that the thief, that the dude on the cross, the first guy in heaven was a thief.
Through Jesus.
Yeah, through Jesus.
Believed, yeah.
So in prison, everybody believed that they were being spared the humility of getting raped as an act of God. And that's why
you're talking about Islam here.
Yeah, but that's my point. But that's your question. Your question is it the rules of man or the rules of God? See, now the rules of man would be, I'm going to get raped in prison because I committed a crime. The rules of man, I'm being punished. But God is saving me from, because look, I don't care what anybody says. When you get raped by another man, that is insanely harsh to the brain. It is one of the most destructive things that will ever happen to you. So only an act of God is going to prevent that in a system that is built to break you down and turn you into a woman. Literally, that's what prisons do. You get your manhood robbed from you. And then when you get out of prison, like, look at all of these Hispanics. The Latin men, geez, it's insane. Like what goes on in that community. And, it's why? Because so many of them go to prison too. And they get out of prison, Jesus, their mindset is just horrible. And, think about this. Did you hear about that story about that guy who found out that wasn't his kid and he beat that 4-month-old to death?
Oof, no, that sounds horrific.
It was just the other day. Like, this literally happened either yesterday or the day before. A dude just found out it wasn't his kids. You talked about this on your video, about this Polly Morris, whatever. But why is that holding?
Okay, so I've talked about, before you finish that thought, I've talked about the reason why I argue against polyamory is because I believe that in the long term, the reason why you have sex is to have kids. Now, here's the thing. You got a bunch of partners, right? I have concluded, and it's not just me saying this, it's sociologists, even religious people who say there is nothing more, I guess, mentally taxing and frustrating and perhaps even panic-inducing when a man finds out that the kid he loves is not his. Like, that actually can physically drive a man crazy. And in fact, you talked about this too. You were like, this ain't my baby.
Yeah, I'm gonna
go crazy.
The whole city.
You literally said that once. You were like, I've been taking care of this baby for 2 years. If you're taking this away from me, or if she's not actually my child, I will burn down the entire city. And what you're describing right now with this guy beating up a 4-month-old, it wasn't his baby, now was it?
No, it wasn't. That's the whole point. He found out it wasn't
so
his. He killed the baby.
That's horrific. That is perverse and that's evil. But that is, like, when you do that to a man.
But think about this too. Why did it even happen? Crazy. Because he was in one of those relationships that you were talking about on your video.
That is the definition of cuckoldry, and it drives men crazy. That's why.
But here's the thing: why does it happen? And I know why. We're talking about it because the Latin community, the Black community, they're imprisoned. So when they get out of prison, they're so afraid of doing this and doing that. oh man, I'm telling you now, the only way to stop that type of behavior, the only people who advocate when you're in prison to not live that way are the Islamic people. If you studied Islam in prison, you know, don't do this, don't do that. But if you're in prison and you're being shepherded by a Christian dude, they're like, I don't even want to say they're below betas, because they're like, well, you know, you got to turn the other cheek and look the other way and just let it happen. It takes time for the woman to do this and the woman to do that. But when this dude got out, he found out it wasn't his kid. He thought it was his kid, but it wasn't his kid. I don't know if he was in prison, but when he lost his mind. And here's the thing: should this guy get the death penalty? See, and I say no. I'm against the death penalty. I don't believe in it. I don't believe the government should be killing anybody, because killing's wrong. But if somebody killed my kid, I'd kill him. You know, because I'd kill a guy. I'm not gonna, you know, I wouldn't ask the government to do it for me. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. And if the government had to do something, the worst thing that could ever do, you know, can be done to you is to go to prison, because prison is worse than death. I mean, I can't imagine getting it up the butt and have to live through that for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? That's insane. And like death, yeah, it's quick. You know, you die, it takes, you know, you get your shots. You know, like you probably don't know who he is, but that guy took Stanley Williams, one of the leaders. Anyway, I don't want to glorify him, but when he died like a man. Like, you know, they were fiddling around, they couldn't find the thing. He put his arm out, like he literally helped the doctors and nurses put the needle in so he could just die. You know what I mean? And because death is just death. You know what I mean? It's not like getting raped and living through that nightmare of getting raped. So, you know, he is who he is. But I don't want to glorify him like anybody.
Yeah. And we should probably shift gears a little bit here and go back to what we were talking about. Too much prison.
But here's the thing. How does this apply to the president? Well, it doesn't. That's why I keep telling everybody the presidential candidates, it's all a hoax. People need to focus on what happens at the local level. How does the president impact you at the local level? Joe Biden affects us at the local level because he hired this dumb broad, Symone Sanders. And she's going to incite riots. That's what she does. She's just a young kid with nothing except for the ability to incite riots. That's his public policy. Anything he says is irrelevant because it will have no bearing on us unless it's through taxes. And we already know he's going to tax the heck out of us so we can get welfare for everybody.
Right.
And welfare is just another form of, slavery.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm really afraid of Christians, because they're all for it. This whole Christian left. Oh, because we got to give to the poor. Yeah, but that's not how you give to the poor.
Giving to the poor and having the government mandate everybody be on welfare are not the same things. And I want to make that very clear.
But here's the thing. When you're supposed to give to the poor, not the government. So if you give to the government, you're not giving to the poor, you're giving to a bunch of people in power. You're not giving it to poor people. And I think that's what Christians don't realize. And that's why people don't believe in Christianity, because you're supposed to be giving to the poor. That's the whole. I've never seen a Christian give. Like, you know what I mean? Like they'll talk big, like, oh yeah, I'm for this program, that program. I'm like, yeah, but why do you need programs when you could do it yourself? Isn't that what you're supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
See, but in
we're
prisons,
supposed to be doing that. Yeah.
But see, in prisons, the Muslims do that. That's why I like Farrakhan. Farrakhan, he's anti-Jew. But see, Farrakhan's uneducated himself, though. He's uneducated guy, and he got his education through that Elijah, whatever his name is. I forget his name. I don't want to butcher his name, but I think it's Elijah Muhammad. And Elijah Muhammad was just a scam artist like this Symone Sanders, hired by Joe Biden, who was tricking black people into more destructive behavior. Because, as much as I like what, a lot of what the Muslims stand for. But it's destructive. Like eventually they eat each other because it's just, come on, like women have no freedom. They they don't enjoy sex. It's like being a Muslim, you're joyless, man. Like it's just like if you ever go to these Middle Eastern countries, dude, to me it's just, I mean, if it wasn't for them having so much clothes on, I'd say, man, you guys are all gay. Like just closeted gay dudes, like because a lot of gay guys will say that. It's like, oh, they're all repressed gay people. And or the gays, my friends who happen to be gay all say that. They say like ultra religious people are just repressed gay guys. I don't know if it's true, but traveling, to these countries, and like there's a Levi commercial, and all these dudes are dancing in a circle with the arms around each other.
I've seen that.
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
But but that's how it is. Like it's very segregated to males and females. They hardly ever mix. And like after they have a curfew where women can't go out at night. Yeah. So like after 9-10 o'clock, you see no women, and everybody's doing their thing. And it's like, where's all the women? You know what I mean? And it's a weird thing, but man, I could tell you things, but I'm not going to, because people will freak out with the things that I've literally seen in prisons, or when you interrogate people who happen to be locked up, and they have all of these weird rules in Islam. That is just, I'm thinking, man, this is one twisted religion, because it is. So I'm not, it's just twisted. But I believe, like, the Jewish faith is kind of twisted, but Christianity, I believe, is probably the best, but nobody follows it. Because like I watch how people give. Do people honestly give, or did they give to other groups so they can do the giving for them?
Some do, but some don't. That's all I'll say. Because I mean, also define give, right? It may not necessarily be money, but there's tons of churches that directly go and help out in the communities and stuff, like individually. So it may not manifest as, I'm going to send $100,000 to, charity, right? Because a lot of people do that, regardless if you're Christian. I mean, what's his face does that? Bill Gates does that. Mark Zuckerberg does that. It's like, what does that matter? And we don't have to talk about charity being corrupt to some degree in some places, but going out and individually impacting communities is what we're called to do, and ideally what we need to, myself included, have to be more vigilant about. It's like if you really stand for those values, right? Because what you're saying, Steve, I'm not going to defend Christianity on that. I think you're absolutely right. I think that a lot of Christians say that they give, but they really don't. And the way to combat that is to be at an individual level, like, and this also relates to what we're talking about, because we talk about really impacting people at the local level. Well, that's how you do it. You just get involved. You do it. And the thing is, this also ties back very nicely to people like Symone Sanders, right? I have a feeling if she had grown up in like a situation similar to yours and had kind of understood what it was like to work in those communities, maybe she does, maybe she doesn't, right? I doubt that she would be somebody who would have agreed to that job as the campaign manager.
Yeah.
Just not even out of political affiliation. It's just, this doesn't feel genuine. It doesn't feel right. Like, even if you plucked a Democrat voter from, say, the hood, you couldn't get them to do what she is doing right now. You just couldn't, because
they would never do it.
So that's what I'm saying. It's a mixture of individual impact.
She's like Candace Owens. She really is. To me, like, Symone Sanders and Candace Owens are two in the same. They're going to incite, because that's what they do. They know no better, because they've never really been in the streets. They never had to grow up in the streets. So they just incite because that's their romantic view of the streets. And that's why they incite these riots, because they want to live through it. They want to witness it. They want to see it. They want to be a part of it. Like, oh, yeah, I grew up here and there. Like, like I remember in Riverside, because, it was still the 70s, and they blocked our family, the kids, like my brother, my sisters, then like all these white dudes had these railroad crossings, stop signs, and they wouldn't let us go through. And I'm thinking, oh man, ain't this about us something? And the funny thing is, like, my brothers were actually white. You know what I mean? But like, me and my sister, we look black. So, because this is how it is in Latin families, like some people look black, some people look white. And even though we're mixed, they just wouldn't let you through. So, it's just how it goes.
But one thing I also want to mention, right, about Symone Sanders and your experiences too with growing up in those communities, don't you also think that, like, how do I phrase this?
Honestly, just say it.
No, I actually lost my train of thought there for a second.
No, but that's cool. No, because this is the kind of stuff that people don't think about. Yeah, and we got to get people honestly thinking. Because
that's the thing is, I don't want to get stuck in my own echo chamber for too long. It's easy to peddle conservative talking points without actually getting the meat of it, right? Like,
no, but here's the thing, and I'll say this out loud. To be a conservative, you really have to understand, because even the Jewish faith isn't conservative. It isn't. Because there's a component to being conservative, and that's giving. And how do I know? Because when I was on the streets, I'm telling you now, I think I said this yesterday or the day before about those stupid fish symbols. You know what? But if it wasn't for those stupid symbols and the quote unquote stupidity of the Christians giving out free food, wasting money, I'd be dead. And everybody's clapping in the background. Yeah, I wish that would have happened, but it's the truth. Those dudes gave. And I still don't know. I even if I wanted to thank them, I couldn't, because I have no idea who they were. It was anonymous, and there's a beauty to that. And I believe that's what conservatives do. First, they make theirs, and that's what we're taught on the street. You got to make your own. Just make your money. But once you do it, you can't forget to give. You can't, because if you do, then society crumbles. And that's why I like Ayn Rand, because she understood that. And she was an atheist. That's why, like, atheists, like, a lot of atheists try to believe that they're like Ayn Rand, but they're not, because most atheists are selfish and never give. Because look at Bill Gates. I believe he's an atheist because of how he gives. And then I take that back, because I actually do have an experience with them. But yeah, because like when you're that rich,
he does give.
Oh no, but I'll tell you off air about a really cool story about Bill Gates. Okay. And
because I think people, but what it sounds like you have you're making a distinction about, which is also something I feel, is when you give to charity, right, versus actual giving. And this is not something that you said. My dad himself has also echoed this to me. Right. Okay. Yeah. You give to charity. I'll know that. But giving doesn't just have to mean money that you're donating or whatever. It means to get involved. And it keeps going. I keep going back to the whole help out in your local community. My dad constantly says that. It's like, who cares if you don't have, because people have this impression that they're like, well, I don't have $100 to give because I don't have $100,000, or I don't have $10 to give because I barely make 100. Right. That's not the point. You always have to be giving. And that's what we're taught in Christianity with tithing. It's like, dude, just 10% of yourself. But I think it's more than that. You need to get involved in your community and be giving. Giving is not just about money. It's giving yourself, giving people your time. And that part that you talked about where you can't thank these people even if you wanted to. Yeah, that's the point. Kindness and the romance of it is what keeps society in check, one act at a time. People don't realize that, but it does. Because here's the thing. Had it not been for that, you probably would have killed someone and died, right? But here's the thing. It's all those acts added up. And just like kind of like, it's like no one can really accept responsibility and no one can really take credit for it. But it needs to be like that in certain places. And actually, it does need to be like that, because when it's not, then it's not really a true act of charity if you think about how that is actually broken down.
No, but it's true. But right? this is I'm not kidding you. I would never in a million years would have went to, like, because it was this Catholic church, and every like 3 times a week they'd give you bags of lunches, I'm thinking, I would never go stand in line for them stupid bag lunches. It's like, I don't care how good the food is. But there's like you really have to, come on. Are you really, you're going to like stand out in line? Everybody's looking at you. Everybody's watching you. That's insane. You know how embarrassing that is, like, man, especially when you're a young man. You don't want to be just like standing out there. It's like, man, this sucks, and that's why I believe it should be done anonymously without a lot of fanfare and, oh, look at me, what a good person I am. Dude, it sucks to be that dude asking for handouts or looking for handouts or stuff like that. And that's why I'll always appreciate those people who did those little acts of kindness. Like, here's another one. And this dude was, and I wasn't even homeless at this point, but I was, this is like one of these.
You're still bumming around.
Yeah. Well, it was like, I was living off of people. So like I was staying at this one lady's house, and well, it's not a lady. She was like, we're all teenagers. So anyway, so long story short, we ended up in Berkeley. All of the BART was closed off. And so we were just, had to stay at the bus stations or just stay in the corner. So there was, so we were huddled by this one McDonald's, and it was like 5 o'clock in the morning. And some dude just came out and he goes, "Hey, you guys look like you need this." And he just gave us some hot chocolates. You know what I mean? And just went back into his little McDonald's and just kept working. And I'm thinking, oh man, you know what I mean? But things like that gives you faith that people are good. And in theory, that's what Christians are supposed to do. You know what I mean? Like, that's what, when Christians see other Christians down and out, you're supposed to help them. And, and there was two girls and myself. And I'm pretty sure whenever you see stuff like that, they're down and out. So they shouldn't ask you for help, because we didn't ask for it. And it was like a total shock. And things like that always happen to me. And I always seen that. So I always had faith in people. That's why I never like killed anyone. Like, I never robbed anybody. I never committed. Like,
you feel like on just those acts alone that they're already little but significant enough to impact your life where you don't turn out to be a horrible person.
Yeah, well, it's like, well, you're going to commit crimes because everything is a crime. But I was never going to commit a crime where I was physically going to hurt somebody. You know what I mean? So, and those acts of kindness stopped me and a ton of other people from acting out and robbing people through I don't want to say ground and pound, but just like, physically beating somebody when you're stealing their purse. Because if you're going to steal a purse, you just don't snatch and run. You got to knock them out first, and then you take their stuff, because that's the only way you're going to get away with it. You beat them to a pulp. They're not going to remember you because they're going to be too afraid. Because, they're so afraid for fighting for their life. Then you rob them. That's how you rob somebody. You just don't, snatch and, grab and run. You don't do that. That's not stealing from somebody. And I never murdered anybody or anything like that. Because why? Because of other people's acts of kindness. And that's why you're supposed to do that. And that's why I really want to learn more about Christianity, because I'm curious about what Jesus said about all of this. But that's why you do things like that, because you have to show other people that things aren't so bad and humans are worth caring for. But if you're a homeless dude, or, you grow up in the hood and all you've seen was police brutality and just really like abusive teachers sexually abusing the kids, because I'll say it again, Miramontes Elementary School, that dude was teaching kids for over 20 years, spoon feeding his own genetic material to those kids.
Ugh.
No, for 20 years he was doing that. And because people don't realize what happens in ghetto schools. It is a breeding ground for sexual abuse. Why? Because, come on, broken homes. That's why progressive ideology is so dangerous. And all of these guys are godless, Satanist types.
We're just learning that it's dangerous. I think with every episode, it's becoming more damning, is what it is.
Yeah, no, but nobody knows. See, that's like Candace Owens is such a fraud because she has no idea what happens in these schools. None. Because she never talks about it. But I will give her credit for saying every Democrat's a racist, but she doesn't understand how and why and you know how damning it is or how damaging it is to the kids. Because here's the thing, all of these teachers who all happen to be white for some odd reason, I don't know why, but it's the truth. Like child molesters are all these crazy white dudes, and all progressive, but for some reason they got this radar that knows how to take advantage of these kids, the kids that I used to be. And none of, like all these listeners that you have, I guarantee you none of them grew up on the streets. None of them. They don't know how this is done. Like we are a factory. All of these kids growing up in LA, Chicago, San Francisco that are being abused, East Palo Alto. But see, but that's the thing. Now it's probably in cities like Stockton, Modesto,
Oakland.
You know, well, but gentrification's happening, so they're all getting pushed out. You know what I mean? So, and these male teachers are being replaced. So there's not a lot of white teachers left in Oakland. You know, pretty much everybody's black or something like that. But anyway, so it's like these progressives have a breeding ground for taking advantage of these kids, for taking advantage of these people. And they have no way, and they don't want people giving. Why? Well, if you give the way they used to give, like, you know, with the little fish symbols and putting, how do you know it's not poison? How do you know people aren't poisoning the food? Well, what's the difference? You're being poisoned either way. I'd rather be poisoned trying to eat something good versus being poisoned by having my teacher sexually molest me. As a, you know, and that's the thing. So is Symone Sanders advocating for that?
No.
Oh, gosh, yeah, she is. That's the point. When
not for change is what I mean.
Yeah, but that's the point. That's what progressives do. When you advocate for violence and the destruction of communities, how she does it, that's what she's advocating for. She's advocating for the perverts to go in there and just clean up the mess. Because who else is going to clean it up? To Christians? No, they're not going to do it. Real Christians stay away because they don't live there. There is no God in the ghetto. There just isn't. That's why the Muslim faith, Islam, took hold in these places. That's why there's Hebrew Israelites or Egyptians. Like Brother Polite, and I don't know, I know you guys don't know who he is, but if you look at Brother Polite, I like him. I don't believe in his faith because, you know, he's an Egyptian. Like he really is an Egyptian. You know what I mean? Like his God is from Egypt. And I'm thinking, oh boy. But either way, but at least he talks about or speaks about being sovereign. But he's like one of those guys, he has multiple wives and things like that. And I don't know. I mean, but these women are only dating him. But, you know, at the same time, it's like, you know what I mean? It's a hard thing to raise a whole bunch of kids. And, you know, I don't know enough about the Bible or religion to understand how these people do it. So I'm not going to make a comment about it. But that said, you know, these weird religions that, you know, like the Egyptian and Hebrew Israelites and things like that, that have no impact on the community. They don't build up communities, but they build each other up. Like Polite, he's super rich and he's sovereign. He has property in unincorporated areas and he can be undetected, but all his followers are still at the bottom. I mean, because, you know, that's just how it works. These religions don't build each other up, but Christianity is unique from what I've seen because Christians know how to build up communities. But I haven't seen a Christian in a long time. Like, I haven't seen one in maybe 30 years. I mean, I've seen a whole bunch of churches, mega churches, but I haven't seen, like, how it was when I was growing up and seeing how these Christians used to be. But when I was a kid, I thought, man, these guys are suckers. They just give you stuff. You know what I mean? But that was our mentality. Like, man, they just give us stuff. Because, you know, but then they were building us up.
Yeah.
They were building us up to be real leaders. And I had no idea until now, until recently. That's what real Christians do, and that's what real conservatism is. Because I didn't know that it was the Christian faith that freed the slaves. I didn't know it was the Christian faith that was actually making these people help us anonymously. And we still don't know who. I mean, and that's the thing. We had no idea. But then when I look at these conservatives, and that's part of the reason why I'm speaking to you and I'm your co-host, because you have that same mentality of how I used to see Christians in the old days versus how it used to be now. Like now you see conservatives like Mark Levin, oh, well, busing black kids into what, that's bad. Why is that bad? He and Joe Biden agreed on that. That, and I keep telling you, progressives has nothing to do with political ideology. It's not. It's literally an atheist philosophy that is rooted that Aryans are better. And the thing is, Mark Levin sounds like a Jew, but he's a white Jew. And so is he an Aryan? Maybe. And that's why he, in some aspects, agrees with progressive ideology to some point. And that's the thing. And I don't want to turn this into a religious show because I'm a true atheist, but I'm an atheist who owes my life to a Christian. I don't know which one, but I figured there was like 4 or 5 Christians doing this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're all anonymous. So we have to, make sure that real conservatives honestly understand what they're supposed to do for their communities. And that's the thing that's being lost in a lot of these people. They have no idea. They believe Candace Owens is a conservative. How? By inciting violence and riots and not knowing anything? Seriously. It's like, come on. She's a separatist just like everybody else. And it just, everything just blows me away.
I'm starting to, but I'm getting a better understanding. That's why I like kind of listening to what you have to say. And, I know that this show is not going to be something that is inherently religious, but come on, like think about where you're progressing with this, right? How can we really talk about the true nature of conservatism without addressing some of these? I'm not talking about religion here. I'm talking about values. I'm talking about what it is that people believe in, what they do, right?
Yeah.
And it stems from that. And, as one of my final thoughts, it's what you just said right there, random acts of kindness. That's something that my dad also always echoed and something I believe in as well. It's you do something for somebody else with no thought of yourself and also without any kind of attention to yourself, because then it's not about you. Like that's what Christians believe is like we're one body of Christ. And it's not for your benefit. It's for God's benefit. It's to fulfill his will, not yours. And right there, just right there, if you want to, like, we can talk all day about all the different things Christians can or can't do, but right there kind of actually is the individualized standpoint of what our government should really be about. It should kind of just be there to take care, but no more. And in a weird way, this is something that's kind of weird, should be voted on as far as individuals representing us, even in local communities, but remain anonymous.
Yeah, it's supposed to be that way.
Because here's the thing. What did we talk about in the last episode? And I'm only coming to this conclusion after hearing you talk and listening. Think about Alcoholics Anonymous. Think about why it's so effective. And I am talking to you.
I know. It's amazing.
No. But what did the guy describe it as all through those processes and why it's not conclusive, yet you can feel God actually change these people's lives? And he called it a form of, what was it? Based anarchy or something? Or anonymous anarchy? Because
anonymous anarchy.
and it's rooted in the same values. It's rooted in the same values of, this is for God's benefit, not for my own. And how can we really think about what the purpose of government is about in its true form, right? If it's so centric on who it is that we're honoring. Are we honoring the people that we elect in office? And the reason why I bring this up is not to make it religious, but the president, people prop him up as God, and he's not. And his role is not to be God. His role is not to be there to be the individual to even necessarily usher a better era for your country. The people do that at the state and local level. And that's why it's like, now I'm coming to the conclusion. It's like random acts of kindness, you know, these charities and how they work and how they've saved people like you. And also they've saved many addicts because of its anonymous nature, because it's not about the individual, it's about God. If our government actually functioned that way as a form of almost, it's not anarchy, but it's anonymous.
See, that's Trump. See, Trump acts that way. He really does. And because people don't even know what Trump does. But he does a lot, and it's affecting a lot. Like, for example, because of Trump, people in prisons actually have a better chance at getting heard. And, you know, because a lot of abuses happen in prison. And it's just because, you know, the salary is way too low, and the education for a lot of these correctional officers and other people who work in the prisons, like there's like in Susanville, that prison, there's 3 prisons in Susanville. There's 1 federal and 2 state prisons. You're like, really? Yeah. But come on, what other type of jobs are you going to get in Susanville? It's way up in, you know, bum F Egypt somewhere in California. And it's like, come on. So these people, they depend on these prisons. And it's really hard to be around those types of people 24/7. Well, they're only there 8 hours a day. But come on, for what they have to put up with, you know, people throw poop at them. And it's just, it's a real, like, I'm telling you, all prisons need to be shut down, because it's inhumane. And it's just, you know, and the people working there become like an extension of those criminals. Like, literally, they become an extension of those criminals. And they don't get paid that. Nobody gets paid enough to deal with a bunch of inmates. And, you know, so Trump, and I hate to say this, so because of that, the inmates really do become like, you know, they become like that teacher at Matamontes elementary school. They start abusing the prisoners because they have to start asserting their dominance over the inmates. And when they do that, they start to commit their own crimes, whether it's through abnormal sex or through illegal drugs or just random beatings. Like, you know, those gladiator fights?
Yeah.
That was a real thing. And I believe they got away with it. The Cochrane dozen, the Cochrane 7, those 7 guards, they got away with literally killing people. You know, that it's a real thing. So, you know,
and it needs to be reformed and addressed.
Through Trump is now, and the thing is, I don't know if Trump even knew this was happening, but because of religious organizations, certain things are being stopped. And Trump's allowing this to happen. This never would have happened under Obama or under anybody else, because they love how correctional officers abuse inmates. They love it. I know of a person who literally developed heart disease, and they gave him surgery and all this other stuff, and they deliberately denied him his medical diet so they can give him heart disease again and reopen him up years down the road.
That's so messed up. That's so screwed up.
No, but come on, you know what I mean? But what kind of if that's not cruel and unusual, I don't know what is. You know what I mean? Because that's messed up.
That's messed up.
But that's the kind of stuff Trump is allowing him now to fight. They weren't able to fight those types of things before, but under Trump, policies are now like, hey, look, you guys got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this, you got to. And I don't know if it's because Trump is really religious dude, because I guess he is to some extent, but you know, because people say, is he really Christian if he's anti-woman and all this other? But he really isn't. You got to watch his actions. So if you watch his actions, I honestly believe he's one of those dudes of faith, because not because of what he says or, you know, grab him by the vagina type of rhetoric, but it's what you can do
for
the people who are at the bottom. And that dude who committed a crime, And like I saw his record, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it was bad because it was he used his, like, God, people are stupid, but he used his finger and pretended it was a gun to rob this chick out of her backpack. And she didn't know, so she dropped the backpack, he took it and ran. And you know, so he did time over that. And that's the thing. It's like, but does he deserve to get heart disease over it? You know, was he, you know, is that a good thing? Is that fitting? No, he did his time, but then, you know, is it right for him to become a medical experiment? And the answer is no. And because of Trump, he is now, because look, his life is destroyed. You know what I mean? Like he because when he was in surgery the second time around, oh my goodness. So I mean, he's out now because it's medical mercy.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're medically destroyed and your life is, you know, you pose no threat because you're now like so disabled, there's nothing you could ever do to anybody. It's actually quite sad. But the point is, I honestly believe Trump has to be one of those Christian dudes, because this guy who's suffering in prison, or who was in prison, there's no way he would have got out if it wasn't for Trump. You know, and that's something to be said. It's like, come on. And like, Trump's done this a lot. It wasn't just because of Kim Kardashian or whoever the other guy was advocating for people, you know, in prison to get out, because they're just in there for way too long and stuff. But there's something to be said for people like that. Right. And you know, I'm against the death penalty. I'm against, you know, prisons, because it's not right. It's not right to put these people who, at no fault of their own, because they were born into societies where they're going to be a criminal. And I don't know, like, because, and this is where, like, I honestly have trouble with religion, is because we criminalize all of these people for breaking crimes or committing crimes that everybody else will also do. Because there's a lot of people in prison who are third striked for not having a driver's license, going for speeding, or, you know, DUI, or things like that. Like that, you know, I'm not advocating for any of that because I don't do it. But when when an affluent person has a DUI, he ain't gonna go to prison. I don't care how many DUIs he has. Look at that dude, Edward Kennedy. I don't know if you know who he is, but John Kennedy, JFK's brother, Bobby Kennedy's brother, Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy, yeah, I'm familiar with him. Yeah, Ted Kennedy's kid killed a woman. Literally killed a woman. You know, with through a DUI or whatever. No jail time, nothing.
Yeah.
And why? Because they're affluent. Yeah, and that's
O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, but here's the thing. He was tried and released. A jury released him. That's the difference. Ted Kennedy's kid or his family, the Kennedy family, they were never tried. That's the difference. See, now, when a jury lets you go, we can't say anything about that because the jury tried you and that was it. But under Trump, these people are given a chance to redeem their life. And that's the thing about all of these, like I have a lot of trouble with these conservatives because they're so quick into locking people up without really looking at why these people are troubled in the first place. And therefore they offer no solutions to why they should be, helped or whatever. You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, and that's why I believe religion is nothing more than a philosophy. You know, Jesus is a philosophy. You know, whoever God is, you know, with the Jewish people, that's a philosophy. They're all philosophies. And it's either you choose to do this philosophy or you don't. And from what I've seen all of these people, whether it's, you know, Ben Shapiro or Candace Owens or whoever, they're just people who spout philosophies and they've shown nothing. And I mean literally nothing in improving other people's conditions. And isn't that the whole point of religion and God, is to improve the less fortunate's conditions?
Yeah.
Because the thing is, it's like, because conservatives, like, you got to do it for yourself. It's like, yeah, but because, and I don't know who said this, but something about giving a guy a fish and teaching a man how to fish. See, conservatives won't do either. They don't give you a fish and they don't teach you how to fish. But then liberals, progressive, they love giving out that fish. And it's usually rotten at the head. But see, the tail looks good then no one realizes that the fish head is rotten. And that's why everybody's going for progressive ideology. And everybody, even conservatives, even people on the right are progressive. Because JFK, in today's standards, would be far right.
No, that's definitely true. And I think that
he was a progressive, openly racist, JFK was, but he was conservative.
No, totally. And we have to keep on discussing that a little bit more, especially with the progressivism within the right. Do you have a final thought? Because we do have to wrap this up, and then I'll give a final thought.
Just that Joe Biden's a racist.
Joe Biden's a racist, and you got a white supremacist. Whole
conversation started by saying that Joe Biden is a racist, hired a racist black chick who's trying to destroy. No, but seriously, when she's inciting riots in the black communities, that's just to destroy Asian businesses, because it's the Asians that service the black communities, or, white communities populated by blacks, because that's more accurate. The whites own the buildings, they populate them with blacks and allow Asians to do business.
Right. We're the middlemen.
All the Asians. So this black chick probably hates Asians, probably hates herself. And, and Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden are just a bunch of racists. And that's why they hired this chick.
Well, that's it's good to wrap it up on that note, guys. Thank you so much for listening to the American Made and Paid show. If you got something out of this, be sure to check out some of our earlier episodes regarding to progressivism and white supremacy and racism and all that, because you're just going to get an unfiltered and a little bit of a different perspective dose of truth on this show. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you all soon.